Shalom, 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 everyone. Welcome to a live episode of Race Matters. It is Wednesday, October the 19th, 2022, and it is a great day to be alive and well. And I am so glad that you woke up this morning. That is a blessing. And that you could join us this evening, either live or on the replay. No matter when you watch, it's all good because the information is always relevant. And we just appreciate you gathering with us to have the conversation about
Yes.
race. And you know why? Because race matters. And so tonight we're going to talk about race in the workplace, giving us some statistics on different industries and how race plays out in the workplace. And if there's any examples that you all have about what you've seen personally or that you may know about how race is played out in the workplace. I have some examples. I believe Mariana and Rosie have some examples. Rosie has shared a few times a couple of incidents that she has had being a biracial employee at a place where she worked. And so we tend to, and this is generalizing, not everyone have these experiences. If not personally, we see it playing out in the workplace if we're observant. So we want to get into some of those details tonight and see what might be going on in certain places that might be helpful so that we can bring that to our workplaces, and some things that are not helpful so we can help not to bring it to the workplace, but also too, what can we possibly do better? We have all these diversity and inclusion programs now, but are they really working, or is it just something good to say that we're doing so we can say that we're doing something, right? We all know how that goes. So that's what we're going to talk about tonight. Race in the workplace. And again, thank you for joining us. And before we go further, right now, just as you're listening to me speak, subscribe to the YouTube channel, like the Facebook page.
Yes.
Don't keep all this great and wonderful information to yourself. Click the notification bell so you'll be notified whenever we are on, and you don't even have to think about it. And like this video if you like this information. So, ladies, just going to say, I've missed you. It's been a few weeks since I've been on because of school and everything. I miss you. I miss you. Miss you. Thank you so much for holding the show down last week. It was a
And
great
we have missed you. We have truly missed you too, Miss Sharon.
Yeah.
Yes. We have such a great camaraderie on this show. And Egypt won't be here tonight because he's picking up his brother twin from the airport so they can spend some quality time together. And it just happened to coincide with the time of the show. So we miss you, Egypt. And hopefully we will see you next week when we talk about the current events that's happening. So, ladies, I'm going to just start the show, if you don't mind, with some mental health. That's the field that I'm in, and Mariana, with some statistics about race and how it plays out in our field. And even though, most of us probably know what I'm about to say, it doesn't bode well for our industry. However, we have made strides, just like I think it's just indicative of every other industry. We've made strides, but we still have much further to go. So I'm just going to read to you here. So bear with me with these statistics, but they're very important. So this is the mental health industry. According to the American Psychological Association, 86% of U.S. psychologists in 2015 were white, and that's from NAMI.org. 2019, the Bureau of Labor Statistics found that close to 70% of U.S. social workers and 88% of mental health counselors were white, and that's also from NAMI.org. A Johns Hopkins study published in 2020 shows that there's more minority representation among psychiatry residents, and those are the ones who are in medical school, because psychiatrists are actually medical doctors, physicians, MDs, but their specialty is in psychiatry. So when they're in residency, so this we're talking about the residency, they've gone through the medical school and now they're practicing as a resident before they actually become, board certified doctors, psychiatrists. So in 2020, the study shows that there's more minority representation among psychiatry residents, which is 16.2%, compared with faculty, 8.7% minority, and practicing physicians, which are practicing psychiatrists, 10.4%. And that's from hopkinsmedicine.org. Psychiatrists, now these are practicing psychiatrists, white 64%, Asian 18%, Hispanic or Latino 9.5%, and Black 5.3%. And that's Zippia from Zippia.com. Now, you may be wondering with the Asian population, 18% is much higher than, say, the Hispanic, Latino, or Black population. And if you're wondering why, it's because culturally, Asians are, culturally, say when they're being raised, parents want them to be doctors and lawyers, and that's kind of the profession that they push. So there's a higher percentage of Asians being doctors as compared to other minorities because of that cultural push.
Wow.
But when we get into the statistics of those who in the Asian community who are seeking psychiatry or mental health services, the number is much lower than the percentage of those who are doctors. I just wanted to make that clear because I'm sure for some that statistic sounded like a lot because of them having minority status, so to speak. And it is, but that's the reason why. But again, taking advantage of the service, then it kind of falls in line with other minority populations taking advantage of or seeking out mental health services. So the data from the American Psychiatric Association shows that only 2% of the estimated 41,000 psychiatrists in the US are Black and 4% of psychologists are Black. That is an astounding number. 2 and 4%. So misrepresented in the community where Black people make up about 13% of the population in America, but 2% are psychiatrists and 4 psychologists. We have to do better in this industry.
Right.
Yeah, ideally you would want to see a number that's pretty similar that represents the culture at large, the population.
Okay. Right. Exactly. Exactly.
And that would show representation, right? Yeah.
Right. And and especially in psychiatry, I mean, in all of it, but psychiatry, and for those of you who don't know, psychiatrists are the only ones who can prescribe medication. Psychologists can't prescribe medication, although they're working on that in New Jersey. But as of yet, they still can't prescribe. And if you're an advanced practical nurse, you can prescribe medication. So, and that's the advanced practical nurse, they specialize in psychiatry. But we're talking about psychiatrists, and then we have people on medication. So now you have people on medication, not now, but having people on medication, you're going to see the psychiatrist, and you're hard pressed to find if you're Black, someone who looks like you, who's a prescriber, who's a psychiatrist. Right. So it's very, disheartening actually that we can't find representation in psychiatry for Black people in America. But again, it's improving, but the whole industry needs to improve, but specifically psychiatrists, they're on the lower end of the diversity scale from the data. So I'm sorry, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was going to say, and with that, with those statistics, a lot of people probably have to understand that two things. One is in the Black community, it was shunned to go see a psychiatrist. I mean, it wasn't looked upon. It was frowned upon. You say, I need to go talk to somebody. Well, who you need to talk to? I mean, it was frowned upon. But on top of that, it's difficult. Now, this is for me, in my opinion, no kind of statistics. But for me, it's hard to talk to a psychiatrist that doesn't look like me, because I can tell you everything that's going on, but I can't see you experiencing what I'm telling you the way someone that looked like me experienced. If I tell you about things that I have to deal with as a Black woman, you're a white male or you're a white female, you can give me your advice, but I still can't feel that you understand exactly what it is that I'm talking about, because you probably have never and probably never will experience the depth and the level of discrimination that I may have gone through. So it's hard, to say, I'm going to go talk to a psychiatrist, and then you see him across the table looking nothing like you, and you're like, this is going to be a waste of my time.
Right. And, the level of comfortability that you feel with someone who looks like you. And I'm not saying everyone, I'm kind of generalizing here, but this is what we tend to do. We tend to, want to go to our own, and not just Black people. We want somebody who understands our experience. Right. And also, I know with many Black people, and I may be generalizing here, but in my profession, this is what I've heard from my clientele and others, when it comes to, now remember, psychiatrists are the ones who prescribe the medication. And oftentimes when when Black people, whether it's children or whether it's adults, see a psychiatrist for an evaluation for whatever reason. Sometimes the schools may send for, I see my clients, they have to go get an evaluation for school. And the first thing after the evaluation, they want to prescribe medicine. I don't particularly think that medicine is always necessary. Let's try some sort of therapeutic intervention first. Medicine should be the last resort, right? Not saying medicine is not important. It is important, but I don't think it should be the first resort unless you are presenting with some serious, major mental health issues, especially if you're a child, because your brain is not even fully developed yet. And that medicine is having an effect on your brain and your development. So
can I ask you a question on that point?
Sure.
I'm just thinking, do you think it's because with certain psychiatrists, I'm just generalizing, but that like in the medical field, that some of these drug prescribe, companies push for different, like they do with hospitals, push for them to prescribe the medications that they are, creating, and maybe giving them some kind of kickback or something. Because I've noticed, from hearing from people that are in the medical field, going to doctors, they pushed all of those, medications for people that had pain, because they could, and they were getting kickbacks. So the easiest thing was to prescribe it. Do you think that may have some trueness even in that field? Because
absolutely, Rosie, that is a good point to bring out. Absolutely. And I'm sure Mariana can attest to it too. And especially, because I work with addictions as well as mental health. Addiction is in the mental health field. It's in mental health diagnosis as well. But I just like to separate it because sometimes people don't know that. And there have been people, even in New Jersey, where I sit at right now and where Rosie sits right now, who have been busted, arrested, criminally charged because of doctors and pharmaceutical companies, let's just say, being in cahoots together. They're trying to push this drug, right? And so the doctor, psychiatrist pushes this drug, and it's not always necessary. But see, there's a lot of money to be made.
We know that the kids are younger and younger ages that, prescribe things like Adderall, for example, which is for ADHD. It's a pretty strong, medication even for adults. Now, it's not the end of the world, but it's highly addictive, right? And we have sometimes 5-year-olds on Adderall, sorts of things.
And I've noticed that that's usually, now I'm not saying for all addicts, but that's usually like when you see people that have jobs and all of this stuff. But I've noticed that seems to be the gateway for them to become addicts, and then when the medication is pulled because the doctors say you shouldn't be on it no more, we're taking it away, and now they're addicted, then they go to the street pharmacists.
Absolutely, and that has been one of the big reasons for this opioid addiction. People legitimately going to the doctor because of, say, a car accident or accident at work, whatever the case may be, and they prescribe these drugs. Are not even meant for human taking, right? And so I read articles about that, some of these things, and I'm not going to mention specific drugs, but what the opioids are, right? In America, what's going on, right? Yep. That humans shouldn't even be, drugs shouldn't be this strong for a human. These things can tranquilize animals, right? But we're prescribing them to human beings, and they know. That's why they've been sued and they've won. You see, the companies are paying out billions of dollars, right? Because they knew, but yet they prescribed it anyway because they knew. And this is the sickness of it. They knew once you get hooked, you got to come back, because that's the nature of addiction. Right. So if you take this, you're going to be back. The more you come back, the more money I make. So the more scripts a doctor writes, the more money the pharmaceutical company makes. And now, Rosie, what you're talking about, if there's kickbacks, the more money the doc makes as well.
Yes.
Right. And so, of course, they put some laws together, like you can only prescribe so many, every 90 days, you got to come in to be seen. You can't, you only have a script for 30 days. So it could cut down on the abuse, but the abuse still happens. And Rosie, you are so right. Now that I'm addicted, and now you've cut me off, doc. You got me with scripts. But now I got to go find something, a street drug, heroin, right?
But shouldn't these doctors, and just asking, I'm just getting your opinion, but shouldn't they, at least as physicians, figure a way to bring them down off of them, because they know that they're addictive? So shouldn't there be a weaning process once a doctor starts prescribing and then he realizes that the patient is now addicted? Shouldn't there, or even like you said, now that they're saying they can only give so many for so long, but shouldn't in that period, say like you said, 90 days, the first 30 days give them the full amount, and then the second month start weaning them until they are weaned? Because you can't just you just can't pull something and then the person gets the shakes or gets the nauseous
withdrawal.
Withdrawal symptoms. So there should be a weaning process. Not only should they be limited on how many months they prescribe them, but in those 3 months there should be a weaning process so that by the last month they can come off without side effects, without having those things. Don't
Absolutely.
you think?
Well, now, Rosie, so we have a couple of categories here, and Marianne, I don't mean to take over the answers. Feel free to jump in. You have the categories of the ethical doctors who probably wouldn't even allow within the parameters that they have control someone to get addicted, because they would probably be saying, okay, we're going to take this and this is how it's prescribed within that first 30 days. And then, but if you're, let's talk about your pain level, right? Let's talk about how you were taking them. You ran out before the 30 days. So that to me says you're already taking more than I've prescribed. And as the physician, I've prescribed what I know is going to keep you functioning without so much being addicted, right? But then when you're the unethical doctor who's just in it for the money, then you're not caring about the patient, and you're caring about the money because of greed.
Right. And I think to an extent, in some cases, it was also a bit more nuanced and complicated, because a lot of these pharmaceuticals were also hiding for years how highly addictive these drugs
Yeah, they
were.
had the research, but it wasn't forthcoming.
Right, exactly. So they were not forthcoming. And I think for some of the doctors, they also got caught in a system that was pushing for that. Because, when you work for like a group practice or a hospital, you name it, right? Like, it's not just like someone from a pharmaceutical company coming and pushing it on you, right? You might be told by your boss, right? This is what you do. So sometimes people do get trapped in, difficult situations. It's not to excuse. And I think
you're right, Mariana.
I think some doctors have absolutely abused that for sure. But I think in some ways, even that became a systemic issue,
right?
In which like some people are probably caught out of fear, jobs, and so on.
That's why I think, so yes, we put some stopgap measures in so this can doesn't continue to happen, and it still does continue to happen on some level, maybe not to the degree that it was before. But when pharmaceutical companies do approach doctors with certain medications, there should be, and not that the doctors are pharmacists, but they should be able to have something or put something in place where they can look up, and it may already be, and maybe they're just lax on it and need to be more vigilant. What's in this drug? Why is it so powerful? Why is it stopping the pain? I'm just using pain as an example, and why is it doing it so quickly? Because again, if you're a doctor, you do know something about medicine. I mean, that's what your profession is. And so you can see, there's a certain level of this that makes up this drug, and there's a certain level of this. Well, this is a really potent ingredient, you know what I mean? And knowing that that's kind of, too potent for a human, a child or an adult to handle. So maybe I can write a prescription, but now the dosage has to be much less than what I would write before. So if I would
modify it
10 milligrams, maybe I would maybe prescribe a 5 milligram, something like that. I think the doctors need to have their stopgap measures in order to not fall into the traps, like Mariana was talking about. Do their due diligence so they don't fall into that trap of, now I've basically caused someone's addiction unknowingly, because I just took for, the pharmaceutical company's word for it, even though they were hiding information that I didn't know.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I think there is absolutely a level of responsibility for all parties involved, and yet, I think in some cases it's a lot more intentional, and with the intent to gain money. Like, I think there was the one family we heard about. I think there's a documentary about this. What is the name? I can't remember, but anyway, it doesn't matter. Like, bluntly lying, they made billions off of people getting addicted. Like,
yes,
clear intent to benefit personally.
Yeah, greed leads the way in a lot of that stuff, and that's why every time you hear somebody talk about a situation when dealing with somebody that's financially gaining, they always say follow the money.
Right.
And if you follow that money, you'll see what is happening. You'll see that a lot of those addictions for people that even school kids, they're playing basketball, they got bad knees, or they fell and had a bad injury, broke their arm, and all of a sudden you're prescribing them pain medication so that they could still do stuff and not feel that pain. But what you're doing is creating an addict. And then unfortunately, then with the kids, they start going through their parents' medicine case and stuff to feed that addiction that the doctor is now no longer giving them. And it's sad, but someone needs to be held accountable, which, like you said, Sharon, is starting to happen, now that it's out there. So
and not even the drugs that are addictive. So let's talk a little bit about, we have 5-year-olds who are being prescribed psychotropic medication. Right. And so their brains aren't nearly fully developed. And so it's having an effect on their personality, their mood, their creativity. And I think, and I wish I had gotten some statistics on this, but I'll get this for next month, because I want to have a show specifically on addiction next month, addiction and mental health, with how race plays a factor in prescribing psychotropic drugs to children. There's a connection there.
I know a lot of families that their kids, in our community, that are being pushed with the medication because their child has got ADHD and ADD and stuff. And it was funny because Sinbad was talking about that one time about how he had ADHD and how he was always hyper. And he said, but I didn't need medication because my parents cured me, because they said, move again and I'll beat you. I'll tear you up. And he said he was sitting in a chair like this. He said, but he didn't move. But
right. And some things, I think personally, ADD and ADHD is two of the most overdiagnosed diagnoses with children, because we just want children to not be children. Just be calm and be able to sit in the classroom and just listen. They're kids.
And you know what, Sharon? And on top of that, Sharon, when you have developing children, their brains are empty. So they are taking in so much, they can actually multitask, because their little brains is catching everything. And here a lot of people think, oh, they're hyper. No, they're exploring. And they see this and that and this and that. And now you want to tell them, I mean, back in the day, if you were that hyper, they said, go outside and play.
Right.
They knew you were hyper and keeping you. And see, our kids are kept inside so much because of the fear of kidnapping and child trafficking and all of this stuff.
And because of technology, they don't even want to go outside.
Technology, so everybody keeps them in. But then you say they're so hyper. That's because they have too much pent up energy that needs to be released. And instead, you medicate.
And unfortunately, ADHD is not even the most stigmatized diagnosis for children, right? There's, others like conduct disorder and opposition disorder. And we have studies pointing out that when it comes to, white kids versus Black kids,
yes,
a child is much more likely to get an ADHD diagnosis, which implies like, oh, there's something going on with their brain and they can't sit still. Of course, it can be, like we just talked about, if they medicated, how that can be challenging. But sometimes they're not medicated and they're provided like an IEP where they can have additional support. Whereas a child of color might be diagnosed with like conduct
disorder, right?
Yeah. That is so true, Mariana. That, and then they get disciplined, sent to the office, detention, and they have the same problem that the white kid had, except they're saying, okay, you need help. We're going to get you assistance. You need to be on timeout. You need to be suspended. You need to, stay after school and discipline. So, wow, that is such a great
there's
point.
studies show that the discipline for Black kids is for the same issue in school is much higher of an incidence of either calling the police or having detention or some, sort of punitive measure for Black kids more than white kids for the same offense in school. This is proven.
We've seen videos of that, right? That's something that Rosie says now a lot. Like now we have social media and sharing too.
Yes.
Record all of these.
Yes, those are the things that are putting it out there.
And it's so heartbreaking to see adults being, affected, with issues of race. But we've seen multiple kids getting arrested, and
I remember. I don't know if you remember, Sharon, but I remember seeing that young Black girl sitting in her class, and the police officer attacked her. Jumped on her and
grabbed her out of her chair.
Yeah, slammed her to the floor and everything.
That was horrible. That was horrible.
I cried. I was watching that in tears because you get enraged. As a woman of color, you see the disrespect and the
handled her like he was handling a man.
Manhandling. He manhandled her. And she wasn't doing anything but holding her desk. Didn't want to be bothered. Didn't want him to touch her. And wham! He snatched her out. And I'm like, how is this possible?
I know, it's exasperating.
So we know this about the police, but unfortunately, levels of that is happening in the mental health field too. And this is where I can speak to that. I was recently hearing a training that was highlighting even in the cases when, let's say, Child Protective Services become involved, colors more likely to be removed from the home for the same, behaviors that or same reports that a white child might get additional support. A Black child might be removed from the home, and then fast forward and later on too, right? When people are adults and they go to a therapist. So I know, Rosie, you're talking about wanting a therapist or a psychiatrist, right? That will understand your experiences. But in addition to that, I'm sure you want someone who's not going to perceive your behavior, differently than they would another person, and potentially something that's not the case. And, that has been the case that, and APA, this is where it's a field which is American Psychological Association. There's the APA American Psychiatric Association, and then there's APA American Psychological Association. And, I had to receive trainings, through this organization in one way or another. But now I'm finding out that they've done their, share of silencing, of overt racism, and other ways they were just more silent. But this dates back to civil rights, where we had Black psychologists approaching the APA and sharing concerns, and they were not taken seriously. And overall, minorities were pathologized, where they're using Eurocentric models on minority populations, which is not applicable at all.
And even back in slavery days, I mean, this is so ridiculous, but for a slave to want to run away, they said he was something, or she was wrong with them. Mentally, because
you got it good.
Be a slave.
They're like, you got it good. What do you want to run away for?
Meanwhile, they fought the independence war and they wanted to be free from being colonized, but to be free as a person of color meant something was wrong with you.
Right, exactly.
And especially since you weren't human, you weren't like us anyway. You were below us, so they didn't understand none of that. So
let me just read this final statistic before we move on. So this is for adults. The racists, then everything else was about the professionals in the industry regarding the different races who are seeking any type of mental health service, which would be whether it's seeking medicine, outpatient or inpatient services. Whites, 16.6%, Blacks 8.6%, American Indian or Alaska Native 15.6%, Asian 4.9%. And see that disparity, that difference rather in the Asian population who are psychiatrists, 18% versus those Asians who seek treatment, 4.9%. Okay, so the Hispanic population that seeks treatments of some kind, 7.3%, and those who are two or more races, biracial or triracial, whatever, are 17.1%, and that's from the SAMHSA.gov website. So, as we know, whites take advantage of or receive or seek out treatment, mental health services more than any other population, any other race, as well as they make up the most professionals in the industry, and then as well as more of the faculty when it comes to educating psychiatrists and psychologists, etc.
Well, that's because they dominated the field, in the beginning, right? So back in the day. So, I mean, you've seen, whether it's in movies or whatever, but you've seen where they've been for centuries going and seeking help and stuff, and it was acceptable. And, that's where the mentality has to start shifting even better with the Black and Hispanic communities to be able to do that, because it is acceptable, but it was just never offered. So we never sought or looked to seek it,
Right. And this is a positive regarding Black people seeking treatment. COVID has had its devastation, as we are aware, but there are some good things that have come out of this period of pandemic. More Black people are seeking treatment, and more couples, Black couples are seeking therapy because of what the pandemic has caused, in relationships and in depression, anxiety, things of that nature. And so more Black people are seeking therapeutic services. So that's a good thing. So I mean, I'm sad that it's because of COVID, but I'm glad that that there's some awareness that's like, what, we need to get some help. And they are finding more, because again, there's more now, as the statistics bear out, than before. More Black therapists who they can see, as opposed to going.
Sharon, you froze.
Yeah, I don't know if she can hear us, but I was curious. I wanted to ask this question from both of you, and I guess we can ask Sharon when she comes back. But Rosie, do you wonder if faith communities play a role in whether people seek treatment or not? Because I know in some, you will be encouraged, and then mental health treatment.
Well, see, that is a very good point, because being that people of color, that's what they fell back to the religion. That's what kept them together and kept them being able to stay strong. So that's why it's such a strong thing for the Black community, faith-based, therapy. And that's all we had, because back in the day, the only thing Black people could have was their own little church, but they couldn't get involved in nothing else. So if you want to get together and y'all do y'all praying to whatever y'all do, that's fine. And that's what helped to build such a strong Black community, is the faith-based part of it. And I mean, that's what they did. They went, they prayed, they did that kind of stuff. They met
at church is where we got everything
taken care of. That's where we got it all. So yes, you have a good point, Mariana, that it's more likely that our therapy was our church, whereas in the white communities, they were getting psychiatrists, psychologists, and all of that, and going and talking to people. But we only had that within the church community. So that is also why we have such strong faith. And so, it's such a historical part of us that, a lot of times you'll see us dealing with stuff, but that's because we know who to go to. We know if I don't call on God, I need to say this to all the time. you want to handle this, or do you want me to handle it? And 99.99999 of the time, he handles it because he knows I ain't good at it. I always handle
that would reach 100% if you would allow him.
Yeah, but then you know what? But I think I have enough. I have enough knowledge to know that I do allow him to check me, and I'm able to handle it. But the other part, all the other 99%, I gotta say, you got this, Daddy, because if I handle this 1%, I'm gonna handle it wrong.
Right.
But that's
I apologize, guys. My internet went out, so I don't even know what.
Mariana, do you want to restate that so that Sharon could
yes,
hear
please
everything?
Do. That was exactly what I was going to do. I was curious about the role of faith and how even the church sometimes that can be a support where people go to as the first option before they go to professionals, but also if that plays a factor in whether minorities do seek treatment, because sometimes there could be a stigma coming from faith backgrounds around mental health, which I know it's changing, and I know a lot of pastors now doing people to get help, but then I also heard a lot of pastors discouraging psychological help too.
Right. And yes, you are so right. It is changing because pastors are becoming more aware that it's a good thing to go to therapists. God created therapists, right? So it's a good thing. But like Rosie was talking about, way back when, and then slavery times, and how our faith started, and throughout the times, we spiritualized our mental health. We just pray, and God will take care of it. Jesus will take care of it. Just pray. And prayer is good, and we should pray all the time about everything, because the Bible tells us to pray without ceasing, right?
Yes.
But faith without works is dead, right? So you have the faith, but also too, go see the person that God created, right? The therapist, the doctor, etc., gave us skill in these areas to help. Just like he gave a medical doctor skill to help, fix a broken leg or whatever, how you said it and everything like that. Well, he gave therapists, psychiatrists, psychologists, that talent, that skill to help you with your mental health as well. But it was stigmatized, and that's how it became stigmatized in the Black community, because just pray. We were people of faith. Just pray. And so now it's like, again, we're moving from that, but we have a long way to go. But we were entrenched in that spiritualization, and that Jesus was going to handle everything.
Yep. And the other part was, if you weren't getting better, then it was because you weren't really saved. You're not going to, you need to go to God. You need to get saved because God should have taken care. And if he doesn't, then you're not saved enough. Spiritual.
I think that's where this can become counter, productive, because on one hand, the way both of you have described faith being such a, helpful support, I think that's beautiful. And, love Black churches. I think
it's the backbone of our culture.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, and I think they're incredible.
But depending on who's leading it, it could also backfire.
And so that's part of that. Like, how do we navigate, both of those, right? And we can name that it can be helpful in so many ways. And sometimes being around people is exactly what we need for our mental health, right? And having a community is one of the best things we can do to get better emotionally too. Sometimes people would say 3 good friends is better than a therapist.
Right.
That's true too, especially in Black communities, when you got some good friends to talk to, and you can share the way you want to share, and know that there's no kind of judgment that's going to happen when you got the right friends. I'm not saying all of them, because you can't share everything with everybody.
That's right.
So some people are looking for material on you, and they're looking to dirty up your name and make your name look bad, or make you look bad. But you've got to make sure you have the right ones that you talk to. And my opinion is, you better have it on one hand, and don't even use all your fingers. Just have a couple of them. Don't have too many. Too many is too much of a headache.
and as close ones that you truly fully.
That's why I say just a couple of them.
I think there's a benefit to a larger community, but it's okay to share some things with some, and then more with others. Not everyone has to be a best friend to have good community, right?
Right. So we've been talking about mental health, the mental health industry, and how the racial makeup is with the professionals. Have you, Mariana, had any experiences? Of course, without identifying anyone, but just generally speaking, in the places where you have worked, or schooling or whatever, have you just seen how race has played out? Just, you may have been like a fly on the wall, but you kind of see what's going on, right, around you, or and you indirectly, or you may have seen something overt happen right in front of you. Have you had any of those experiences in your schooling or in your workplace?
I think they happen everywhere if we're honest, right? So of course in some moments we have to there could be various explanations, but not necessarily. And there were times, honestly, when I had to learn and grow myself through this, right? I remember, and I changed now, right? Even the issue of time, where I'm not as on time now, but there were times I was maybe even the one being frustrated sometimes if a colleague was not there when I expected or something like that. And I had to learn that that's not the end of the world, right? And cultures do look differently, and sometimes when we prioritize being on time over people's well-being, that's not right either. Which is where when we had a Black professor and she waited for everyone to be back in class before she started, I thought that was the most beautiful thing, and that was a good lesson for me. I had experiences myself as a immigrant sometimes, right, where I could tell that people needed me to prove myself before they could trust me, and then being a therapist, right, I have to be very careful with confidentiality. But unfortunately, I would say that there have been quite a few experiences where I think people were prejudged for nothing of their essence and their ability or their character, but more so based on color and how do you look and ability, right?
Right. Yeah, I can't recall anything totally overt happening in the places that I've worked, but there's definitely been some times when I've questioned, are you doing that because I'm Black? Are you saying that because I'm Black? Or just the environment and just seeing other things that are going on, and the hierarchy. Places that I work tended to be, the executives are white and line staff is Black, and middle management, there's a mixture. And again, things are changing in some of the places that I've more recently, come to know and work for and with, and when I say recently past, 10, 20 years, Black women have been the heads of companies.
Right.
And I am in senior management, as well as outside of owning my own business, in senior management at other places, that I provide services for and consultation for, being in a higher level position. And so also to being mindful of leveling the playing field with people that we hire, right? Because now that we're in, say, a power position to do so, making the staff reflect the community that we serve, right? Because oftentimes I've seen, white programs, especially in drug and alcohol rehab treatment, the ownership and leadership is white, and many of the clientele, they're Black or Hispanic, white as well, but a lot of the population is Black and Hispanic, but the staff does not match with the clientele, who the clientele is, and so wanting to improve that balance. So when the client comes in, they can see people who look like them, who are servicing them. Right. And so that's one of the, ways that I am trying to level the playing field, if you will, where I have that level of control. So, and Rosie, I know that you have given, the examples.
I mean,
experiences in the
what's
workplace.
what's great was when you.
Oh, I'm sorry, Rosie. I'm sorry. What did you say?
No, I said what was great with what you just said is, also when you have to balance that out, because there's a certain part of comfortability, that when I walk in an office, that the person that I see sitting on the other side is either going to make me feel uncomfortable, not because they've done anything wrong, but my mind is thinking, are they going to think I'm just complaining, or are they going to think I'm over the top, or are they going to think I'm pulling a black card, or you have a lot of you even though you're going there to talk to them, you have a lot of reservations because you don't think they will understand where you're coming from. And it's difficult. So I mean, to walk in an office and see, honestly, guys, I'm just being honest, but to walk in an office and see that somebody looks like you actually go like this. Okay. You actually can feel that sigh of relief that you think you're going to talk to somebody that when you say what's happening, they're going to really understand you. They're going to understand you, and they're not going to judge you. They're going to say, yeah, I know what you're talking about. I know I saw it happen with my dad. My mom went through this, and they're going to feel it,
Yeah, it creates a genuineness. And of course, it depends on the individual too, and how their personality is, of course.
Right.
But it creates a bond in the relationship, that might have to be worked for more with a person of another color. Right. Not that you can't achieve that bond, but it may take more work because we already have that distance just without even knowing each other, because you're white and I'm black. And that's part of our socialization, right? Because we know as kids don't care, right? That's the adults that are placing these burdens, right, on us and how we judge.
It makes sense to want trust to be built first. For example, as a woman, when I'm in a space with men, right, you have to first determine if this is a safe person, right, before
right
your guard down in some way. So I think it makes sense to.
And it's funny that you said that, because in the industry that I worked in, being a utility worker, and I'm just saying that because I don't like to broadcast where I worked and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
But working as a utility worker, I never thought it this way, because I came from Camden. I'm black, and I ain't worried about nobody. I can handle myself. But walking into some of the homes that you go into, you never knew whose home you're working in, you're going into, and something could have happened to you as a female. Because I've had plenty of people whose homes I would go into, and they'll say, "Do you know what you're doing?" And I didn't know if they were asking because I was female or black, because I had, like I told you all in the past, I had a company that I walked into, and they had supervisors there, and they asked me how it felt being a minority, and at that moment, I completely forgot about the female portion. I thought they were talking black because they were all white who asked me, and I got livid. I was ready to ream them. And when they realized that what they said made me think black, they were so apologetic, but still they tripping on their own tongue, because they said, no, we mean, how does it feel being a female in a man's job? And when I took my tools from around my waist and I extended my arm with the tools on it to the gentleman. And they're looking at me confused, saying, what are you doing? I said, well, if it's a man's job, you all can figure this out. You just let me know what you find. Oh, well, we don't know how to do that. I said, exactly. It's for the person who was trained to do the work. I said, it's not gender-based. Just because it's been held mostly by men, it's not a gender-based position. It's if you are qualified and you were trained to do it.
Absolutely.
So I mean, I've done cartwheels in my job. I've had people shut the door in my face because I was black, and that was a female. So when I see females, I feel more comfortable, because I'm thinking once they see it's a female, their guard will go down, because now they don't have to worry about some strange man in their home. But when I had a white female, shut the door in my face, I was like taken aback because I thought she would be relieved seeing a female, but I was the wrong color female.
Mm-hmm.
You know, right. So I've seen different spectrums of race play a part, even with some of the supervision we had. I've seen race play a part in a lot of stuff. I've seen where a supervisor had all of his black employees in his gang. Out of maybe around about 15, 16 techs, you might have 5 or 6 blacks in your gang. And every morning, those 5 and 6 were told to stay at the garage at the door, waiting for the supervisor to call you in one at a time to question you on your jobs that you had the previous day. And when you have white coworkers walking past you saying, y'all see what's going on, right? Then it's blatant. It's not a cover up. The supervisor is showing just how he feels about you people, you know, and working. And for me, like when I was added to that list, I have been with the company for like 20 years. Mm-hmm. It just floored me that, oh my God. Let me tell you what the hardest part of discrimination is. It's when you're working somewhere and then you make me realize that you see me that way. Because see, my race doesn't play a part for me. I just come here to get my job done, do the job, have fun, hang out with my co-workers. But then when you force me to see me as you see me, that's when race becomes an issue for me. Mm-hmm. And that's what was happening. I worked there for 20 years and never even thought about my race until I got lined up with my other coworkers that time.
And that part of like realizing that this is a company you've dedicated so much of your life.
Loved that company.
Time, you know, in many ways our health, right? Because you know, like there's always a risk. You know, either direct injuries or like long-term stressor on the body. And to dedicate all of those years for a company and then to experience something like that.
And experience something like that and not have the company back me up.
Right, yeah.
That's the worst part. You know, here, I've been here all of this time, and I was even a go-to person. When they had irate customers, they would say, see what Rosie's doing. Call her, see if she can go over there to customers, you know, and it might have been another tech there. They were like, get Rosie over there right now. Cause they knew I knew how to bring the customer down. And it was funny to me because there was a couple that was actually getting ready to go presidential. They were going presidential on the company and they were Jewish, you know? So when I went in there, I knew, oh, these people ain't playing with nobody. And the first half an hour at that job, I sat there and I talked with her and what they did, oh my God, you know, did all of that stuff to show that I was compassionate about her feelings. And then once I got her attention, I was able to say, well, let me see what I can do. If I can't do it, you know, and they knew I knew how to finagle the customers. And when I finished with this customer, she wrote the company and said she renewed my faith in your company. Mm-hmm. If it wasn't for you send her, and then to have you do what you do to me and not back me, it's devastating. It's really devastating. I'm telling you, if you've never experienced the level of discrimination that some of us go through, I couldn't tell you how long I cried and cried and cried when I was at you know, a stalemate with them and being dealt with in certain ways. And I cried for like, I'd say almost a month and a half. I just cried. Every morning I cried. And that's when I said to myself, it's time to leave, you know, because my grace period here is done. I said, my grace period at this company has ended. It's time to leave because my emotional well-being was more important.
And that shows, right, you know, that issues of race in the workplace truly are real.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry you went through that.
It takes a toll on you.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I've had, you know, experiences in the workplace and in higher education where, you know, I'm what's the word? I'm underestimated you know, because of my race. And then you know, I'll say things, and because I'm very outspoken, and then you could just tell because people's facial expressions change. And it like they're astonished. Like I, as a Black woman, can't say such things or be as intelligent as I am, and so I'm underestimated quite often with my intelligence. And again, you just see the facial expressions, like, wow. You know, I didn't know. What do you mean you didn't know? I mean, I'm in higher education,
Yeah.
just like you are. You know,
And
I'm in senior management positions just like you are, executive positions just like you are. Like, why are you astonished?
Now, Sharon,
Right?
when you are able to, you know, let them see your intelligence and, you know, see that I'm just as skilled as you. I got the same training, so don't be shocked if you understand this. I do too, because we both have gotten this training. But do you have you noticed where any of them might have seen you as arrogant? You know, or maybe that, you know what I'm saying, because you
Yeah.
showed
Yeah.
your level of skill and intelligence and knowledge, that instead of looking at you and saying, wow, she's really intelligent, or that they might say, oh, she thinks she's all that. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Well, I'm going to say a no to that. Generally, now is that totally it? No, but no, generally, because I think part of the reason is how I present myself. I don't come off as arrogant. There's a difference between arrogance and confidence, and it's a fine line. But I don't come off as arrogant. Now, again, could there have been an instance that I'm not recalling? Probably, maybe, sure, okay, but not anything that I can overtly remember. It's just more, and at least how I'm viewing their nonverbals, right, as just being astonished that, you know, my intelligence is, you know, on
Wow.
par with them or even greater, right? Because then the questions come, you know, well, how did you learn? You know, so, well, where did, you know, it's like, well, I went to school just like you did, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I've gone to some of the finest schools, you know, in my time on earth, right? But it's like, you know, they're not expecting that,
Yes.
you know, so therefore they're taken aback,
Yeah.
you know, but I'm here to play just on the same field with you. Right. And I've gotten some of the same training as you, and I'm here to bring it just like you are.
Yep.
I just bring it in a different color with a different flavor. Right.
And you know what? And that's the same even with my job. Whereas certain techs would seek me out. You know, if they needed help, you would think they would call one of the guys, because, you know, you're talking about a garage of maybe 70 techs, and only 3 or 4 of us are female. Maybe, yeah, maybe 3 or 4 of us are female, you know, and that you have certain techs that would call the desk and say, hey, can you see if Rosie's finished, because I need help. And if, you know, see if she's done, can she come and help me? And the techs that asked for my help, it made me feel good, because these were techs that were really good at their job, like me. And they were this one young man, he was very meticulous about everything he did. And it never failed. Anytime he needed help, he would call the desk and say, can you see if Rosie's available? And that made me see that he respected and honored the fact that I did my job. I was good at it.
Right.
And if he wanted somebody to come and help him get the job done, call her. She'll get it done with me.
Well, that's amazing. Yeah. But I was curious, Rosie, where was the question coming from? Has that been your experience? That, you know, because I know oftentimes a Black woman and activists that I, you know, follow would talk about that, like when they're vocal, you know, there was like a backlash of some sort, or, you know, they're being seen as, you know, you're too self-confident, or too much of this or too much of that.
You know what? But you know what? And this is funny, because now that I think about it, but this is funny, but I would, because of the job I had, I would extend my femininity. I would always, my nails were done all the time. If I climbed a pole and broke a nail in my glove, I would be at the nail salon that night getting it fixed, because I could not have that. I did my hair all the time, and I would always have perfume on. So I showed up to let them know I'm a technician, but I'm still a lady. you know, and that I think impressed some of them, because they were like, that's why some of them were like, well, this is what you do. How long have you been doing this? And they were surprised because they would see this, and I would be like, hello, how are you? I really poured on the femininity, so because I did not want them to confuse. I didn't want to be looked at as a tomboy,
right,
or masculine. And I wanted them to know I got a hard job. I'm doing my job. I'm carrying my weight, but I'm still a lady. So treat me like a lady, And that, I think, is where I got so much respect from my co-workers that I was with. Some of them were, muy macho, very masculine, and wanted to act like they were all that, and I would let them. I'm not here to emasculate you or to be a bigger man than you. I don't want to be. But in all essence, I mean, there were guys would come to me, and this is dealing with not only that I was a female, but they knew that I at one point that I had become a Christian, I got saved. But those guys, even the ones that would have issues with me, when they had problems, they'd come to me, Rose, can I talk to you? The one guy, he was like, well, me and my wife are about to have get a divorce, and can you talk to me? And I was able to talk with him and pray with him and stuff like that. And within a couple months, he said, guess what? We're back together. But but that's what you do. You let them know that you care, even though you're co-workers and everything like that, you're still Rosie, you're female, you understand what they're going through. And I love the fact that doing that job made me very sensitive to how men act, how men relate, I think I am skilled at understanding where men are coming from. Skilled at it, because I worked with at least 69 of them, 68 of them.
Right.
So I had dealt with them.
That'll do it, right?
Woo,
that's a good teacher.
Yes, it is.
With a lot of men.
Yes, it is. Wow. Yes, it is.
Well, ladies, we have come to the close of our hour. This was a great conversation.
Yes, it was. It is.
So thank you so much for the conversation, ladies and gentlemen. I hope that you received something from the conversation and that could add to your life, and how we have to every day, no matter what color we are, navigate these spaces, these workplaces, and places of higher education that we're in. And we're all growing, we're all learning from it. So we're not going to always get it right. But as long as we're trying to make inroads, to make it better today than yesterday and better tomorrow than today, by doing our own part, because we can't do someone else's part. And so let's make sure we're doing our own part and not pointing the finger at others when what am I doing? Right. And sometimes what I'm doing needs to be speaking up and not being silent, because silence can be seen as consent.
Yes.
But when you see things go down in the workplace, speak up, but speak up appropriately. Choose your battles, right? Don't be arrogant, right? And simply state the facts that have been seen from your perspective. So there's a way to go about it, is what I'm saying, because we don't want to create more trouble when we decide to step in to be a bridge, right? Because we could be then perceived, right, as being a divider when that was not the intention. So I hope you enjoyed the conversation. Those of you who have watched live, thank you so much. And those of you who are watching the replay, thank you as well. No matter when you watch, please share the feed either now or on the replay. Click the notification bell so you'll be notified when we're on. And please subscribe to the YouTube channel or like the Facebook page, depending on where you watched. We so appreciate you. Join us next Wednesday at 8 p.m. for another live episode of Race Matters, where we're going to be talking about current events and race, and how race is playing a part in current events today. So we'll update you with what's going on in current events involving race next week. Thank you so much. Have a great God week. Have a God evening. Rest well. Shalom.
Shalom, everyone.